Snow White has been a disaster. Disney is reeling right now. There are all sorts of problems internally at the company. They had some success last year with the likes of Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine and Moana 2, but the problems at the company continue and persist. But the issue is now, guys, is that as they try to correct course, it seems that shareholders aren't interested in helping remove some of the corporate rot that has affected this brand. So what they did is they put forth a proposal to get rid of the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index. They didn't want to participate in that anymore. And if you don't know what that is, and it sounds like some type of middle management corporate BS, you're not wrong. That's exactly what it is. The Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index is a benchmarking tool that evaluates and ranks businesses based on their policies and practices related to LGBTQ plus workspace equality. The purpose of the CEI is to encourage companies to foster inclusive work environments and recognize those that excel in supporting LGBTQ plus employees. So they roundly rejected the removal of DEI from the company, which is something that even Disney is starting to roll back in lieu of Trump's executive order related to companies, using DEI policies. And it's become a really contentious issue for everyone as people debate. It's kind of like the word woke, which I really hate, which is that depending on who you are, you have a different definition of the phrase DEI and what you think it means. But if we're talking Disney at the creative level, it is the idea of race swapping major characters in traditionally Germanic folklore and things like that solely for the sake of scoring points with people who likely aren't going to buy your products anyways. Even if you hire the right person for one role, you'll hire the wrong person for the other role, like Gal Gadot getting hired, and then people boycott your film anyways. So they're still going to use the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index. It needs a shorter name.
It does.
It really does. It's a form of corporate virtue signaling that doesn't benefit you on the creative side, but on the business side, depending on how much you rely on stakeholders as opposed to shareholders, it boosts your company's score within these metrics that they use. There's great videos that have been done about the topic of corporate progressivism and how they use these types of virtue signaling tactics to raise their company's profile with companies like BlackRock, companies like Vanguard, State Street, which invest heavily. I think I think Warner Brothers itself is largely owned by those companies as far as the shares in the brand. But only 7% of those shareholder voters voted to get rid of this. And that's a bit shocking. But I wonder how much of it has to do with people who might just not be on the pulse of what's going on, or they feel as if there is a difference between implementing these policies at the corporate level as opposed to at the creative level.
I think there 100% is a difference, in my opinion. Because, at the corporate level, very blatantly, we've definitely seen an improvement over the last 3 decades of, the variety of people who get hired. I mean, there were, several articles and studies that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s that showed people during hiring practices would 50% or more of the time not hire people with black names just based on the resume because of their own personal biases, nothing more. And often it wasn't even intentional. And then I think 2 years ago they did a few other studies that showed that the percentages went down.
Yeah, but the issues we're dealing with now are quotas.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that on the corporate side of the hiring side and ensuring people are actually being hired fairly, that's great. But now that it's become politicized in other elements of the business in marketing and things like that.
But Disney has things like the Reimagine Tomorrow initiative, which the goal was to give 50% of their hires to underrepresented groups, when most people, at least the people who want to see the movies do well, would say you shouldn't be hiring on any quotas. You should be hiring on the merit of the person who's applied for this job.
And that's my point, is that they've pushed it too far.
Yes.
The initial goal was admirable, and then everything got too insane.
The way to do it is anonymized resumes.
Yes, 100%.
No names?
No names, just honestly, maybe for the first round, no names and not even any not even yeah, what's your degree, but not what school you got
degree,
it from.
experience.
That's
like,
one of
that.
That's one of the the biggest misnomers that you always hear is like, well, it's about hiring two people who are equally qualified when it's impossible to do that because every hiring manager is going to have their own standard of metrics that they employ. Most of the time, it's got something to do with the resume, but it also has to do with the way they interview. And no two people interview exactly the same.
Also, like, I mean, people say it doesn't happen, that, like, people don't get hired because of these quotas. I had that happen.
Yeah.
I did not get a job that wasn't even, like, client-facing. It was it was a writing job, sure, but it wasn't like, you know, anybody was going to be able to look at my name and know exactly what I look like.
So it's in the chat. I thought this was interesting. It says it's corrupted from the top down. What I think it is more likely true a lot of the time is that it's corrupted from the middle management up. So what happens is the CEOs, we've seen this in the way that CEOs, as soon as Trump took office and started rolling back DEI policies, they're like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of them. Now with Disney, it's a little bit different. They said they're going to roll them back. What they did is they changed the name of these policies and they continue to do the same thing. They employ the same metrics. They give the same bonuses to people for hiring metrics. They just change the name of what that bonus is called. It's very, very sneaky, but you know, that's corporate life in general. All it's going to do is make all it's going to do is make their hiring policies and their mission statements more opaque and vague. Like, whereas before, I mean, in general, I laugh at the idea of like corporate ethics and mission statements because most of the time the mission statement is to make money and everything else is just a side effect. It's like, if the idea here is we want to do good for the community, yes, so you can make money, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but the question is, if people tell you that they don't want these policies in place, if they don't have faith in companies that run with this type of ideology, you're not building a recipe right now for a more transparent company. You're building a recipe for those same middle managers who are likely not losing their jobs to write even more vague language, to make everything even harder to decipher. It's going to keep YouTubers employed for a very long time as they try to discern all this stuff. There are so many channels. We are not really one of them. We're not like, we don't cover Disney a whole lot. Like, shocking, but not everybody's interested in corporate structure. But like, there's a lot of channels that do really, really good work, like deciphering the way these companies have tried to pull the wool over the eyes of the public. The public knows it's happening. They watch the movies. They know they're bad. They watch the productions. They know that things aren't what they used to be. But you don't understand is how it got to that point.
That's the thing that I don't get is like, why are we here? Why is the entire country, outside of a small but loud minority on Twitter, saying, "Hey guys, can you just make good movies?" And Disney's like, "Absolutely not. I am not doing anything without thinking about diversity quotas first."
And Brett just said it. It's like, at the end of the day, you have to look at the incentives. But
what's the incentive?
Well, that's the thing, is that if their bottom line is showing that this stuff is making them more money, even if everybody keeps calling it garbage, that's what they're going to do.
But it's not making them more money.
Is it?
No, it's not. Not compared to the budgets. Like, so if they make $700 million on a movie that costs them $100 million, sure, but none of those movies were done with those budgets. They're done with $250 million budgets and $100 million marketing campaigns. So if you're making a movie for $250 million and you're spending $100 million marketing it, you're doing that to make $1 billion.
Also, when you look back at it, really think about the movies from when we were growing up.
Yes.
Were there that many movies where you were like, there's not a single non-white person in this film? It wasn't like, oh, all of the leads in all of the movies I'm watching are male. No, you go back and you look at it, and there was a good spread. There was diversity. There were people of all shapes, colors, and sizes. There were different religions involved. And nobody was talking about diversity. It only, as he got into the 2010s.
Because it's a capital D buzzword that means something very, very specific. I told this.
But what I was saying is, I feel like we have the same amount of diversity, slightly more in some cases, but the writing quality and the acting quality and everything has gone downhill because they're all looking at it and going, all right, well, we need to make sure we're hitting these exact numbers. We need to make sure that it looks good on paper. Our statistics for how many people are doing what.
I point out the Fast and the Furious unbelievably diverse franchise
Incredibly
of people
diverse.
from the very beginning. Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, Paul Walker, Tyrese Gibson in the second movie. It's literally like it looks like a college brochure, a very, very criminal college brochure because they're all criminals in the movies. But it looks like a college brochure, but nobody pulled into question whether that was what it was supposed to be because it authentically felt like everybody was exactly who they were supposed to be for the role. Paul Walker was a rising star at the time. They continued the franchise even after his passing, and it got bigger as it went on. And those movies do better now overseas than they do in America.
Also, if you look at I'm thinking even movies like Remember the Titans, which is a movie about racism. It is a movie about racism in a small town. It didn't feel as ham-fisted as it does now when they shove it down your throat. Like people were capable of a really good example of a movie that did it well was the one with Jonathan Myers and Glenn Powell.
You think Jonathan Major? Yeah, Devotion.
Devotion. Yeah, Devotion was great, and it slapped you right in the face. It's like, hey, this is a movie about racism. And it didn't feel like a woke movie.
The problem is making that movie now is going to turn so many people off that they're not even going to bother to see it.
No, but this was only a few years ago.
No, that's what I'm saying. Doing that movie in 2023 reeks of the studio saying we need to make a movie about racism.
It did, but the movie handled it. It did a good job.
There's a barrier to people even going to see it because they're tired of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, even if Jonathan Majors hadn't had the scandal that he had, that movie wouldn't have done the numbers they wanted to. Because look, what was the movie from a couple years ago with Green Book with Mahershala Ali, and it won Best Picture, and they talk about how it was a white savior movie. See, you can't win. You'll make at least somebody mad every time you cover this stuff. People there should be a moratorium. We need to put a stop on movies with messaging for 10 years until we can figure out what the hell is going on.
Well, also, if Hollywood would actually look around at the average American and be like, hey, wait a minute, most people don't care about this.
Or I'm listening to this retrospective on Buffy, and it's really funny when he talks about like all of the themes that are in this show that when I saw it the first time I never really put into place, where it's talking about sex before having sex before marriage, drinking when you're a teenager, all of these things which are kind of implemented into the show in a way that worked. Like they baked it into the fantasy element, to the horror element of the show. And, there aren't a whole lot of Joss Whedons these days. And sadly, we lost the ability to have good Joss Whedons because everybody tries to write like Joss Whedon now and nobody can. But that type of writing did really, really well in the 90s when people knew that it was going to be entertainment first. It was going to be story first, and the message was going to be in there. But maybe it only like resonates with your parents if they watch it with you. But if you're young, it doesn't slap you in the face. Now everybody knows when it's there, and it doesn't matter what their age bracket is. And it's one of the many reasons I think that a lot of younger kids are moving away from this, on top of the fact that they know that content creators, unless it's what they're specifically looking for, aren't going to be talking about this type of stuff. I think nobody's it's actually a discussion that's going on right now with IShowSpeed being in China, where they're talking about whether IShowSpeed was paid by the Chinese government to be there. But it's not like he's talking about this stuff.
I don't think IShowSpeed is working for the Chinese government, at least not in any way he realizes. I'm sure that they were like, hey, come here, we'll pay for your entire trip, we'll get you set up, it'll be a really great experience. Maybe we'll just pay you some money to come to make it worth your while, because for him to go there and skip out on streaming probably does cost him money. So they probably did pay him, and he probably just saw it as like, oh, cool, I'm being, paid to go visit China. I don't necessarily think that a guy like him realizes that he's being shown the areas they put billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars into to make them look pretty.
Yeah. All right. So before we move on, I just want to call your attention to this article because it just came up today. The FCC prepares to investigate Disney over potential discriminatory DEI policies.
Also, just to really quickly, because I saw it in the chat, that should not be construed as me being pro-China.
Yeah.
I am one of the most anti-China people you'll ever meet.
Brendan Carr has already launched an investigation into Comcast and Verizon over racist and sexist DEI policies. He told Punchbowl News he's putting the finishing touches on a letter letter to ABC's parent company, he declined to reveal which specific DEI initiatives he was concerned with, but the letter would outline similar concerns raised with Comcast and Verizon, whether they've engaged in any sort of DEI discrimination that could run afoul of our EEO rules or potentially our public interest standard. We're going to get to the bottom of everything that is going on here, and stay tuned for that one. So they've got a lot of things to worry about. Disney has probably can't really afford right now to get into too many legal scuffles and things like that. So it's just something to be aware of. They're calling it into question, and they're talking about it. So.
Are we sure this isn't a case of psychological reactance?
What do you mean?
Like, you know, part of what we're talking about is the fact that, like, everybody's upset about the fact that everything is being shoved down our throats. But I think part of that might just come from the fact that movie magic isn't magic anymore. Like, these have always been initiatives ever since the civil rights movement was a thing. We just didn't hear about it.
Well, I think it's also what I was saying is they've gone from, all right, let's work a message into our movie to let's build a movie around our message.
But I think the key there is that the message and the intent of putting that message in the film has always been there. It's just that now, when I say the magic is gone, we're getting information from the executives and the creators on a daily basis about what their goals for the films are. Back in the day, even like 20 years ago, they didn't talk about it because we didn't have endless interviews. Like in the early 2000s, that was the start of like a lot of different interviews for like Movie Phone and things like that. We weren't
Movie Phone.
Yeah, we weren't constantly hearing about what the goals of the studios were because they didn't care.
Yeah.
They were sitting in Hollywood in private board meetings talking about this stuff.
Yeah, but now it's part of being
life was better.
Elite,
movies were better when executives were snorting coke in the boardroom and going through scripts.
That's the thing is, I think if we weren't getting news about this all the time, we wouldn't think about it. It would be like back in the old
there's
days.
an aspect of that. So when I watch old movies or old shows that I loved, and I catch the episodes that delve into it, you do realize that there's a bit of pre and post like awakening to this type of stuff. Where now when I watch a new show, my hackles are up for like the first 4 to 5 episodes. Like where I'm looking for anything that's going to annoy me. Like I started a show this year that I really, really liked. I championed on this channel. It's called High Potential. It's a very, very simple, by-the-books crime procedural with Caitlin Olsen from Always Sunny and Daniel Sunjata. And it's by the numbers. 20 years ago, it wouldn't have made a splash at all. It would have been it would have been in the weeds with a dozen others just like it. But now, when I watch it and I get through an entire season and it doesn't beat me over the head with anything extremely blatant, I'm like, wow, that was amazing. And part of that is their own fault that they had to create an industry where I now have to clench my teeth through 5 episodes to make sure that it's not going to get there. And that's knowing that most of the time these shows go bad in season 2 and 3. Another side effect of this is that back in the day, held to a certain standard now, when these things started infecting stories, it was when they ran out of things to talk about. So when you get into season 5 and you've told all the stories you can and the studio says, nope, we need another season, then the good writers leave and they bring in new writers, and the new writers don't know how to fashion a story after the main characters had already been through everything in the first 5 seasons. The Arrowverse this happened in the Arrowverse. After the first couple of seasons of all the shows, they got really, really bad.
I think I would say one of the best examples out there is How I Met Your Mother for how this used to be handled, and I think what the difference was. Because now you'll have a show or a game like Dragon Age Veilguard where they sit you down and they give you a lecture on, you know, what, like somebody walks on screen and they're gay, and it's like somebody has to say something about it, and then there has to be a lecture about it, and it all has to be slammed right in your face. That's how it feels every time there is a diversity moment in a show these days. But you go back to 2008, 2009, How I Met Your Mother, shows like that. Barney's brother is a gay black man. Barney is a white guy. So they introduce Barney's brother and they're like, oh, you know, just so you know, they don't have the same dad. He's black. And then they hit you in the face with him being, he's gay. Then they hit you in the face with him being black. At no point do they sit down and go, hey, you need to be okay with the fact that Barney's brother is a gay black man. No, he's just a gay black guy. Yeah. And he's just there, and everybody's like, oh, cool. Hey, dude, nice to meet you. Like, all right, let's go out to the bar. They tell you these things are okay. They tell you, you know, these people are just like you and me by having them be just like you and me.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.